You're listening to a Bored to Death Solocast, where one member of our clan talks TV shows and movies in easily digestible chunks.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Bored to Death Solocast. I'm Chris, and I'm back with Season 3, Episode 8 of Star Trek Discovery, The Sanctuary. And where we last left off with Discovery, they got more information regarding the burn from the Vulcans, and Stamets no longer has to physically connect with the spore drive system, and a little bit more development with Adira in that she is able to talk with the previous host of her Trill symbiont, who was also her boyfriend, and the information that the Vulcans gave to the Discovery crew is in regards of information to the burn as to what all happened with that. So now this next episode, it shows that Discovery traveled to Book's home planet to help rescue it from the leader of Emerald Chain, which is the Andorian Orion Syndicate. And it seems like Stamets and Adira seem to be, I guess, I wouldn't really say hitting it off, but it's more like it's become like a little bit of a father-daughter-y type relationship, because they're not really partners in terms of like science or whatever, but it seems more like he's like become an adoptive father of sorts to her, because she helped him out, he's curious about her, and like I said, they seem to be pretty well together, and I'm honestly wondering where they're going to end up taking that, because I'm not gonna lie, I think it's kind of adorable, I guess would be the word to use, that Star Trek's first gay character is essentially, in a weird way, like adopting the first non-binary character in Star Trek. So that'll be interesting to see where they take that. So anyways, with this next episode, as I said, they're going to Book's planet to help rescue his home planet from the head of the Orion Syndicate. Very action-y filled episode. Yeah, I will go ahead and see you after the binge.
While the binge is happening, thanks for listening to our podcast. Please give us a like and subscribe and spread the word. You can reach us on social media on Facebook or Twitter at BTD_Bingecast. The Bored to Death clan is part of the CKCC Radio podcast family, including J Bunny's Music Hub, the Race Nerd Podcast, Real Paranormal Talk, Ranking Tracks, Motivational Moves, Girls Who Like, and The Nerd Table. Please consider supporting CKCC Radio on Patreon. And now, the binge is done, so let's get to the discussion.
And I'm back after viewing Sanctuary. This one, they go back to Book's home planet because it's essentially under rule of sorts by Emerald Chain. The head of Emerald Chain is an Orion named Osira, and she was mentioned in the previous episode where they go to the junk planet Scavengers, and she essentially left her nephew in charge of that planet, and because of the events of that episode, this episode shows her with him on board her ship, and she's like, oh, well, it's because of you that this happened, and it's also because of you that we lost Ren, and Ren is the Andorian, who had been punished and had his antennas cut off, and was forced to work for them. And so she goes and punishes her nephew by putting him into a cage with a trance worm, where he's begging her to let him out, and she goes, "Oh, you won't feel a thing. They put you into a trance before they do anything to you." And then he turns around, Transformers there, and puts him in a trance, and then eats him really, really violently because it shakes. It's like his legs are sticking out of its mouth, and it shakes violently, kind of like what a dog does. And you see one of his legs come flying off. And then it shows the outside of her ship. She takes off to warp, and on Discovery, Book is saying that he needs to go back to his home world, and Michael says, "Oh, well, I kind of want to see your homeworld." And he says, "Oh, well, you should have seen it before. It was a much more beautiful place." And so they go there, and it turns out the part of the planet that his people live on is called Sanctuary, and it's a part of a continent where it has a shield over it. And when they go... when Michael and Book beam down to the planet, he says that there are these locusts that are there. They don't look like the traditional locusts, like what you think of, like what's here on Earth, but it's obviously alien locusts is the best way to describe them. So he says that the reason why there were so many locusts seen on land is because they're traditionally from the sea, and they come up every so often to feed on like crops, harvests and whatever. And he says the reason why there's so many of them is because that means that they haven't had a repellent delivery in quite some time. And it turns out the person who is holding the repellent or is keeping it from them is Osira. And she is essentially talking to Book's brother, who we meet in this episode, saying that he originally just wanted Book. And Book left... It's revealed that Book left his home planet 15 years prior because they were essentially hunting the transworms, and because he did not agree with the fact that his people were working with Emerald Chain, so he decided to dedicate his life to relocating transworms to another planet, which is what we saw in the first episode, and that is called Sanctuary 2, and is on a completely separate planet. So they Discovery crew is told that because of this being Emerald Chain territory, they can't really act in terms of like, oh, well, defend the planet from them, or free the planet from them, or whatever. No, they're told, all right, show up and just say that you're observing. You're basically just observing on behalf of the Federation to check on the planet. So while they're there, Osira's ship shows up and tells Saru to surrender Ren over to them. He says no. She goes, okay, and starts firing on the planet onto where Sanctuary is. Now, mind you, it's got a giant shield over it, but it's just a straight up volley on the planet onto the shield, so obviously it's not going to hold. And so what Lieutenant Detmer, who is the Discovery helmsman says is, well, we can't open fire. Or no, it's not Detmer. It was Tilly who recommended this, since she is now the first officer. Where she says, oh, well, we can't fire on them, but a rogue Federation officer who defied orders only to be punished later on decided to do it themselves. And so, next thing you see is Book's ship, which reminds me of the Millennium Falcon because of where the cockpit is located. Is on like the left side. It's highly maneuverable, has quite a bit of firepower behind it, and seems like it can also take a beating, and he has a furry critter with him too. So Detmer and Ren fly out, and Ren doesn't want to do this at all because he's like, she already punished me by cutting my antennas off. Do you think I want to be vaporized by her now? And she's like, yeah, but you're the best co-pilot that I can ask for right now. And meanwhile, he's pointing out where to shoot it on the ship, and while they're doing all these like high-flying maneuvers and stuff around the ship and firing at it, Grudge the cat jumps into his lap, and he's like, oh my god, what is this? He's sitting there freaking out, and she looks over at him and goes, oh, it's just a cat. He goes, what's a cat? He goes, is it like a pet? She's like, yeah. He's like, what's that noise I'm making? And this is the typical cat sound when a cat is obviously upset, and is essentially trying to seek comfort, or is trying to hide or whatever. In this case, it hops into his lap trying to find a safe place to be. And he actually holds on to this cat for quite a while before the cat hops out of his lap. And so all that's happening, and Book manages to convince his brother to essentially stop working with Emerald Chain, and he also finds out that his brother also had a son in the 15 years that Book has been gone off of this planet. And the little subplot for this episode is that back on Discovery, Stamets and Adira discover the origin of the burn in that it's in a nebula. And they say, well, there's a signal coming out of this nebula. So they listen to the signal, and because of the way it sounds like the song that Adira plays on the cello that she uses, that I think is the same one that she got from her boyfriend, Gray. And Adira and Stamets, at one point in time, they also decided to do a, I guess I could say a duet with him on the piano and her on the cello, where he says, alright, we're going to start with G minor, which is a simple one, and so they start playing along with that. So, anyway, that's how she recognizes the tune that's playing is because it's the same song. And after they kind of like change the frequency a little bit and they tweak it, they recognize it as a distress signal from a Federation ship. So Saru asks, how long will it take to decode it, or to locate it? And they're like, oh, it's Stamets says, oh, it'll take Adira just a few hours for her to get done. And Saru says, alright, well, get it done as soon as possible. He leaves, and Adira looks at Stamets and goes, I prefer they. He's like, what? And Adira says, I've never really identified as a she or a female, so I prefer, they, them, their. And Stamets just looks at her, smiles, and goes, okay. like, it's like, well, he says, well, people accept me as gay, so I can accept her as not wanting to identify as female. And that's when later on, while they're waiting for this whole thing to finish decoding, that's when they decide to do the little duet on the cello and the piano. And at one point in time, they see her passed out at the main console in main engineering, and it's him and Hugh, and they're talking, and Stamets takes his jacket off, his uniform top off, and he's wearing a t-shirt underneath, and he goes and he drapes it over her, and they're talking around her. I'm sorry, them. They're talking around them, and Stamets is already saying the they, them, their thing. Hugh is already doing it also, and the way that this scene is set up, to me anyways, it almost makes it look like they've adopted her. I'm sorry, them. I'm gonna have to get used to doing this. I'm not used to non-binary characters. And they're like, oh, well, they're 16, they are essentially a tween or whatever, but they're really smart, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, they wake up and says, whenever I sleep like this, my back starts to hurt. So, gets up, hands Stamets' jacket back, and leaves. So, there's that little subplot. Now, there's another plot also going on. This is how this episode starts, actually. Is Philippa keeps getting these visuals, or these visions from the mirror universe. Now, I don't know if whether or not this takes place in her past, or if she is still, like, connected of sorts to the mirror universe, and she is getting images of someone that was essentially close to her. And apparently she is trying to hide this information from Hugh and the medical team, trying to find out what is wrong with her, like what's causing these things to happen. And I know that the next episode, Terra Firma Part 1, is going to essentially elaborate on that a little bit, because I think that's going to be the theme of that episode, is them trying to figure out, what is it that's actually killing her. So, are they going to have to send her back to the mirror universe, or is there no way to actually do that because of what David Cronenberg's character said in the... Oh, which one was it? I believe it was the 4th episode, Forget Me Not, where he says that there hasn't been contact with the mirror universe in like 500 years. So, but if you know your history, you know that the Terran Empire fell. Especially if you have seen the Mirror Universe episodes from Deep Space Nine, where they show that the Terran Empire had fallen and humans were essentially used as slaves, especially on Terra Nor. And now this episode, yes, they finally pinpointed the origin of the burn. It's in the nebula. There's a signal coming from it. But that's about as far as they really got, other than, it's coming from a Federation starship. But the question now is, what Federation ship is it? How long has it been there? Because the burn happened like about 120 years prior to the events of Season 3. So therefore making this whole thing about the burn a theme for this particular season, much like how the Red Angel was the theme for season 2. So I'm wondering where they're going to take that with the next episode of they're going to go and explore this particular neighborhood. And when they dropped the teaser for it at the end of this episode, it showed a hologram of a Starfleet officer wearing the season 1 and 2 Next Generation uniform. So I'm wondering where they're going with that, because that definitely has my attention, because I love it when they go back and they kind of like show previous uniform styles and ones that we haven't actually gotten to see yet, much like how when we saw the Enterprise C crew in yesterday's Enterprise wearing the uniforms from their particular era, which are basically the Wrath of Khan uniforms, but without the collared shirts on, which is weird, because I thought the collared shirts kind of completed that look, but I guess they were slowly phasing those particular uniforms out. So, but anyways, yeah, this was a good episode. I haven't really seen a whole lot of weak episodes yet. Weak moments, yeah. I know one of the biggest complaints so far that I've seen is that everybody's like, oh, well, there's too much crying in this. Well, there was also crying in previous Trek shows too. You just gotta look for them. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next episode. I'm looking forward to seeing how they finish this season off and what's planned for season 4, because they just announced that season 4 has been greenlit. So, yay. And I also read, I don't know how true this is going to be, but they've also said that they're going to do a crossover with the Kelvin timeline. I don't know if that's going to be in a comic or if that's going to be in the show. So, I'm going to have to keep an eye out for that one. So, but anyways, I'm Chris, and I will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Bored to Death Bingecast. Be sure to check out our library of past podcasts via CKCC Radio or via our YouTube channel, and give us a like and subscribe. We'll see you after our next binge.